that the amount that the selectmen's recommendation was through conversation and recommendation of the department head. And I just want to remind you that when we come back to bring our next budget, I did not have the opportunity to present any of the 7 choices that I had laid out. You started the meeting by throwing out a figure which happened to be a close figure.
Right.
And I explained what the decrease in the level of service would be.
Right.
I just want to make that clear.
I apologize if I construed that, because I just thought that we did come relatively close, and if I didn't say that quite right, I apologize. My initial recommendation was 711, and yours was 716, so I thought that we were comparatively close in our reduction after the first vote.
Right, but my point is, there were 6 other options that I was prepared to present that had minimal impact, minimal changes, right down to the bottom line, which had more severe impact and lower level of service. I just want to kind of lay out the change in the level of service that these budgets or these recommendations will take into effect. Both numbers will lose the dispatch center that's downstairs, and the officer that is the first person that you meet when you come into the department. That position closes at the end of the day tomorrow. We're not going to get that back with either number. So when you call the police department now, it's going to be picked up by the Oxford County Dispatch Center. You ask for an officer, and an officer will get in touch with you. The other reduction that is coming is the use of a utility officer was built into the budget for this coming year to reduce our overtime costs and provide us more efficiencies. Neither amount that's on the ballot will fund that. I think the biggest change that we're going to see is the loss of another police officer, which is the detective's position. The detectives do the major crimes. They are instrumental in doing our drug investigations. It's a more than one person affair when we do a drug investigation. With the help of the community, we still need multiple officers to do this. This will severely limit our abilities without spending additional overtime money to do these drug investigations. But drug investigations of drug use and the sale of them and the use of them is the nexus to most of the criminal activity that we deal with. The thefts, the sexual assaults, sometimes drug and alcohol related, the burglaries. So it's very important for us to have as many resources available to try to be proactive and not just reactive to handle these. Now, I've heard through every one of these meetings that we've reduced our police services because our population is reducing. We are a service center community here, and it's not just our population that we're serving. We have people that come into this town for good and bad reasons, and we are dealing with all of them. I have to have officers available to respond to these calls. We've been compared to Paris because our population is similar. Well, Paris's calls for service in the year 2012 were 1,998. In Rumford, we're 4,382. It's not just the population. You have to consider the demographics here. As one of my officers alluded to before, the amount of apartment buildings that we have in town, we are dealing with a lot of people in a very confined area, which generate a lot of complaints. People living closely together don't always get along. So it generates a lot of complaints. The The sheriff's department, who has been alluded to, that we can rely on them as mutual aid, they cover all of Oxford County, which goes all the way to the border down by York and Duncan County. They're spread pretty thin. But in comparison with their population, their calls for service was 6,080. We're almost there in our small community. So it's important, I guess for me, for you folks to understand, in order for us to provide an adequate service, we need to have officers on the street. And that includes detectives that work after the calls come in and try to mitigate and reduce the amount of drugs and drug trafficking in this community. And hopefully that will reduce some of the calls for service that we have for assaults, thefts, burglaries, general harassment and assistance calls. So I would ask that the citizens and the voters approve the finance committee recommendation to keep us at a reduced budget, but at an adequate number for us to respond to the calls for service for you folks, so that we can all stay in what our mission is in providing a safe, happy place to live, work, and play.